Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the What is the Power of We podcast. And today, Steph and I are so excited to be joined by another brilliant mountaineer, business owner, badass human being, Wendy. And we will kind of let her do more of the introduction and talk more about kind of her story and her badassery, but she's just like truly amazing. We're so lucky to have her here today. Wendy, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you both. I'm so excited to be here. I love what you guys are doing, and I'm just thrilled to be a part of it. So thank you for having me.
We are honestly, truly so lucky to have you. I feel like every time I have a conversation with you, I come away 30 to 40 to 50 to tens of hundreds of years wiser. And like you just drop so much beautiful knowledge all the time. I love listening to what you have to say. And so, really, so excited to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I echo
Appreciate that.
that. For those who don't know, we all met on Aconcagua last January, which is only like it's almost been exactly a year. And I just feel like you were such a pillar for so many of us, like a pillar of groundedness. And I mean, you talk about like leaving with all this wisdom. I feel like all of your wisdom, and we all left like 325% like wiser just by listening to what you had to say. And you probably had the most experience out of everybody, out of our female group that was there. And so yeah, I've always just looked at you as such a pillar of groundedness and strength. So really excited to have you on here today.
Thank you. Yeah, when I think about that experience, what's funny is that I feel that if I did it again, I would basically, I felt like I wasn't as confident as I should have been leading up to it. So the night of the climb, my I mean, power inside of me literally came out, and it was this really beautiful experience of, I think I went into a flow state literally for those 10 hours that we climbed up that mountain. And it was one of the coolest experiences of my life. But a lot of the days leading up to it, I do feel, yes, I definitely had like my confidence and my experience behind me, but I would say my confidence was a little bit shaken by past experiences that I had had in the mountains recently, in the high, just before that. And so I kind of let that get to me a little bit more than I would do again, we live and we learn. But one of the things I took away from there is if you go into a situation worrying a lot about getting altitude sickness and really letting that kind of take over your mind, then that's probably what's going to happen. But luckily, I was able to put myself in check a little bit and have those conversations with myself earlier on. But every experience you have in the mountains, it's like a completely new learning. And So that one was a really good one, and it definitely built a lot of confidence. But I've also had experiences that, that shook me and rattled me, and still learned from them. But I appreciate you both saying that. And yeah, that's very flattering to hear that. Yeah, at least you guys didn't notice my uh, lack of confidence in certain areas. I think I just really let myself worry about getting altitude sickness. That was really the
Mm.
thing. Like I knew when it came to the climbing, I had what it took. I knew that my fitness level was there and everything. But if you've ever had high altitude sickness hit you hard, it comes really without warning. And so it's one of those things that you definitely, you know, worry about. But now I've had, a few high extreme altitude experiences. I've had a lot of high altitude experiences. Those are all new experiences and things that are building blocks for my next adventure that I go on. Um, but yeah, I think that's like just a big lesson that I learned is really just allowing yourself to make it a different experience the next time around, taking
Mm.
what you've learned from it, but not letting it control you so much.
Yeah,
So
it's it's funny. I mean, well, for people who are listening, first of all, when we talk about being afraid of altitude sickness. We were at around 23,000 feet. Is that right? I don't operate on feet anymore, but I
Yeah,
think that's
22,800. Yeah, just under
it,
23.
I think that's around like an airplane cruising
Yeah.
altitude
Yeah.
domestically. No joke here. But I think it's so interesting when you talk about like getting into that flow state on summit night. It's kind of where we all want to be, but
Mhm.
you could never immediately jump into being in that flow state, right? Just by virtue of being on a mountain. There's always a process that leads up to it. So I really appreciate you kind of leading with this idea that you just have to be open to what the mountain is going to offer. And I don't know, I think that kind of ties very beautifully into what we've been talking about in this podcast, which is vulnerability and this idea of being open to
Mhm.
receiving and being open to giving and open to receiving.
Mhm.
So I guess I would be curious to just kind of start off with like that word vulnerability and what does that mean to you and how have you brought that into this idea of mountaineering that you now take with you?
Mountaineering. I've been mountaineering most of my life, actually. From when I was a teenager, I started backpacking and, mostly just hiking, actually, when I first started. But I've always been madly in love with the outdoors. It's like my very first memories of life have been literally 5 years old, sitting out in the woods and feeling a deep connection to nature and my surroundings. It's always been the place that has brought me the most peace. And just it's just been a huge part of my life. And specifically, I've grown up in the Northwest of the United States. And so, yeah, I mean, I started doing that and then just got into mountaineering at an early age and rock climbing and all of that. And what I think when I think about vulnerability, the thing that really comes to mind to me that I've learned in mountaineering is, you enter into this thing that you fall in love. You're going out and you're pushing yourself, and you are, you know, uh, uh, pushing yourself way outside of your comfort zone, hopefully, and doing it with, I've taken a lot of classes and technical training and stuff like that. I definitely am a planner and really like, a left brainer person. So I have spreadsheets of all the routes that I want to do and things like that. And I take the time to make sure that I have the skills. But the mountains always have their own lessons for you to learn. And I think the biggest one for me that I've taken away that plays into vulnerability is really having to put my ego in check. And what is difficult and just really not unique, but really something that I've noticed that just in mountaineering specifically is that it's really, you're going to be around mostly men a lot of the times. Like, I mean, it's getting a lot better, but it's also it's a manly sport still. And there, and I also grew up with brothers and stuff too. So I've always been out there really trying to keep my emotions in check and be one of the guys, and then you go into mountaineering and you're also, there's days where you get scared and you really, you start being emotional, or maybe you just don't know why, but you're feeling emotional. We all thought that was kind of interesting on Aconcagua at extreme altitude, that we were feeling kind of emotional a few times. I'm like, I think that high altitude might make me feel emotional. Like I just wanted to cry. And it was, part of it was the beauty of it and the joy in it, and the other part of it I couldn't really put my finger on. It was just powerful. It's a powerful, the mountains are such a powerful beings in my the way that I feel about them. And so that brings a lot of emotions to me. When they are good and when you're feeling your best and you're, performing in a way that you're proud of later, it's easy. It's like you're like, yeah, I did this amazing thing and I ticked this goal. I checked this off my list. But it's the times when you don't do that, and when you can't understand why your maybe intuition is telling you something's wrong, or you can't really put a finger on it, that you feel like you need to that's when I feel the most vulnerable, is when and it's a lesson that I've even recently learned again this summer, later when I was climbing, is like, I went up on this route and I was leading a team. I'm supposed to be the leader. So I had two people that were on my rope team, one of which was related to me, my little brother, the other, which is my best friend. So we'll just say I felt a lot of responsibility. And so I went up there and I got into an environment that just felt off to me. It didn't feel right. And I was having a conversation with myself in my head and trying to determine how I can basically express this to them without them thinking that I was just being scared. So we were actually on a glacier. There was a lot of crevasses and it was really warming conditions. But we did time it right. So, and we saw other people that were crossing the glacier and that were doing fine. And so then I'm thinking, to myself, am I, just being kind of a chicken? Or what is this feeling? So really trying to wrap your head around it. And the lesson that I took away from that is when you get that feeling, especially over time and experience that I've had, I'm learning to just listen to that and let it be what it is. You don't have to explain. You don't have to, I had to go home. I'm like, I got to explain to, this person and that person why I'd made the decision to turn around. Not even just my team, but other people that were, privy to what our plans were and that sort of thing. So I've had many, many, many examples of that in the mountain where I've had to learn to, for one, listen to my intuition without questioning it too much, because you may never know. Maybe there wasn't a reason, or if you had gone forward, maybe you would have been successful and nobody would have been injured. But other times, I figure, hey, you live to do it another day, so that's fine. But I've learned that lesson many times, and I think it's finally sinking in now, of just allowing myself to be, and that's a vulnerability to me, is to not really be able to explain why I'm not feeling a certain way, or feeling confident, we'll put it that way, or something just feels off. And so that's been a part of it. And then the other part of it is being around a lot of men and feeling like, a really good example of this is when I went to Nepal and I was climbing, attempting to climb Labuche East Peak. And I was the only woman on my team of 12 people. And I was the most experienced by far. Most people had never even been had crampons on, or actually there was a couple of them that were older ski mountaineer guides. So, but pretty much I was one of the people that had the most experience. So when I went into that, I am pretty, I would say, I wouldn't say humble, but I, kind of kept that to myself. But I had confidence and I knew what I was getting myself into. Like, I knew the mountain, I studied that terrain, and I knew that the technical part of it I was going to be able to handle. And then I randomly got sick with HAPE, and it hit me in about an hour, and I was the sickest I've ever been. And I was the only person that did not summit from our team because of that. And it was a pretty big hit to the ego. We'll put it that way, and it was a really hard decision for me to turn around. This is before I knew that I had HAPE. I just was sick, or, I didn't know for sure what the issue was. But so I've had a lot of those lessons, and specifically in the very recent, last 5 years or so. So, I mean, there's no better place to teach you a vulnerability and, how to check your ego than Mama Nature.
Absolutely. She strips us raw.
She definitely does.
Yeah. So I'm really curious because, getting HAPE it's serious, and didn't you get helicoptered out?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I made that call actually the night before our summit attempt with my guide. If I had been left to my own decision without his guidance, I probably would have stayed up there There was a part of me that realized I was so sick I needed to go down.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really hard to put my ego in check about that. And I was
Yeah.
extremely sick. I've never felt like that before. But what's really interesting is when you start to get, more advanced high altitude sickness, um, or mountain sickness of, there's different levels, but you don't think properly. It's your
Yeah.
brain is drunk.
Yeah.
It's the lack of oxygen. And so you realize later that your thought process, that you weren't thinking the way that you would normally think. But yeah,
Absolutely.
it hit me in a few hours. I did make the mistake of, so I kind of woke up in the morning. We ended up advancing, and I gained more altitude, even though I was starting to feel sick. And I maybe could have avoided that it advancing into pulmonary edema, um, if I had stayed where I was at, or even gone down a little bit and then waited it out a day or two and then gone up. But in addition to getting HAPE, I also got like a virus too. It's really hard to tell. It honestly felt like I had COVID.
Yeah.
That's what I thought that I had. And there was a lot of people that were contracting COVID during that year, because we were all flying from all over the place internationally. And
Mm-hmm.
so, that was also a big risk factor. But
Yeah.
I did get tested. I did not have COVID, but I did have swelling in my lungs.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
So
like, but
you
I
did
did
have
have
hips.
fluid in my lungs.
And fluid in my lungs. Yeah. So that was,
Yeah.
it was pretty brutal. I actually got life flighted out. Like all mountains that you go to internationally, especially if you hire a guiding company, you have to get life flight insurance, helicopter evacuation insurance of some
Mm-hmm.
kind. And they're very strict about that in Nepal, in the Himalaya region. And so luckily I was able to, get a helicopter ride down, but they landed me in a helicopter on the hospital in Kathmandu, and I spent 3 days there.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so two full nights, I think it was, or maybe 3 nights, but yeah, it was a while. I was ready to get out of there by the time I did, but they wanted to double check and make sure that everything was healing up fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was very, very brutal. And what's interesting too is if you get HAPE, pulmonary edema, high altitude pulmonary edema is what HAPE stands for. You can be susceptible to get it again in the future. And so that's why I was nervous going into Aconcagua, because I ended up getting HAPE at about probably about 18,000 feet. I think I was in the Himalayas when I ended up getting really sick. And so, and I did not successfully climb my mountain. I ended up getting heli-vaced off. And then I decided within about 6 months from that trip to book my trip and to give Aconcagua a try. And
Yeah.
I had a lot of people in my life that were like, well, that's interesting. Why did you decide to try something bigger after you already tried something smaller and were not successful? I mean, if you're just laying it out, that's really what it was.
Yeah.
And I kept answering, and I did not let that get to me. I really tried not to let that get to me. When people asked me that question, I said, for one, just because you get sick once doesn't mean it's going to happen again. And just because you have a failure or a setback once doesn't mean that you shouldn't go for something bigger. I don't believe that. I don't think you have to do it in these steps. And so I did it anyways. I was like, you know what? At least this time I know what it feels like if I start to get sick and if I need to turn around, and it just is not in the cards for me to, be above 15, 16,000 feet, then that's okay too. But I knew I needed to give it another try. And I really didn't feel anything more than the usual stuff on Aconcagua. I managed
Yeah.
it really well. There was a couple of days where, of course, we were sleeping at like 17,000 feet when we were at some of the higher camps. So, but yeah, so I ended up, my body really surprised me in a good way. It's rough when your body surprises you in a not good way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
altitude is one of those things too that is just there's no predictor. There's
No,
No,
no easy
no,
predictor of how it's going to go one time to another time. You can change
exactly.
the factors all you want, but
Yep.
like at the end of the day, you just don't know how your body
you
is going to
just have no
respond.
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you really don't. I mean, I was in the same physical condition. Like I trained the same way for both times. I did, high altitude training we have a high altitude training room here in Portland. So both, I mean, the factors leading into it were the same. I did have the experience, which I do think helps, there was a few things that I did tweak a little bit. I drank more water. There was a few small things that I learned from the first trip that I was able to change in the second one. But you're so right. I mean, and that's what they say. It's like, some of the, climbers that I have met in my life that are, some of the most uh, well-known climbers in the world right now have experienced hay on one of their
Mhm.
first climbs, or gotten really sick from high altitude. So you just don't know.
Yeah.
That's what I love about life. It's all a surprise.
It's all a surprise. I'm really curious and this could be a super simple answer, but I'm curious about it. So, you know, Aconcagua was significantly higher by like what, like almost 5,000 feet higher.
Yeah.
What was it that spurred you to sign up for that? Like why Aconcagua? Why go so much higher? What was that? Because that feels like even, I mean, it's a courageous act to be like, I'm going to do this again and I'm going to go bigger, but that's also very vulnerable, right? Like knowing what happened last time.
Yeah, it was. That is a very good example of vulnerability that I felt very raw in leading into that. And I chose Aconcagua because there's been two places in the world there's more than two, there's a few, but two of the mountainous regions of the world that I really wanted to go and see was the Himalayas and the Andes Mountains. And so I don't know specifically why I chose Aconcagua. There's plenty of other mountains in the Andes mountain range that you can go to and uh, that are shorter, that are not as tall as Aconcagua. But I think there was something in it being a bigger challenge that drew me to it, to be honest with you. And I can't really quite place it. I did a lot of reflecting on it, and it wasn't an ego thing because one of the things that I've learned as I've gone into, I've gotten older, and every time I choose a mountain objective or just some sort of challenge for myself, I reflect on it for a long time and try to make sure that it's something that I truly want to do. And then I try to dig down and see why I want to do it. And, is it something that really falls in line with what I'm going to appreciate and enjoy and love? Or is it something that I want to go post on social media about or tell my friends, like, I climbed the highest mountain in the, Western Hemisphere? Because, yeah, it's one of the seven summits and it's the tallest mountain in the Western Hemisphere. But it was just something that really drew me to it. I've always been attracted to mountains that have a lot of varying terrain in terms of, like, I like big treks. I like climbing technical parts of mountains too. And sometimes I choose objectives that are smaller but have more challenging objectives in terms of maybe like steeper snow, or maybe you have to get roped up, or there's other things in maybe glacier travel or something like that. But Aconcagua, when I looked at that route, I knew that I could focus all of my energy on managing the altitude, and that was really going to be the challenge for me. The terrain did not challenge me on Aconcagua, but it was very challenging. So I always tell people, because, a lot of my friends and the people I associate with that are climbers, that are experienced climbers, are like, oh, that's not a technical mountain, right? So it probably wasn't that hard. And I'm like, it was not a technical mountain in terms of, and it can be depending on the conditions. There's times where, yeah, you have to have a good crampon and ice axe technique and that sort of thing. But with that being said, I really felt that I was going to be able to focus my energy on the beauty of the space that I was around and just managing my flow and my process and letting my body do what it needed to do. And so that's like, one of the big reasons I think that I chose it. And I was not disappointed, let me tell you. It was everything that I wanted it to be and more. Such a beautiful learning experience, and definitely challenged me. The altitude challenged me. Just the push. It's a big endurance push. I mean, what were we climbing for 36 hours, I think.
Yeah.
With a small break to nap in there, where we just laid there and basically thought about what was going to happen over the next,
over the next 24 hours.
Exactly. There was no rest.
No.
So, I mean, I thought that, and I love in big endurance pushes like that too, where my body wants to give up and I am able to push past that. So yeah, it kind of had a lot of that. And so, but I will tell you guys what, yes, going and picking a objective that was significantly higher than the one that I failed on. I don't like to call it failing, but it is, and failure's okay. I've accepted that. It wasn't a failure, but it was initially felt like that, so yeah, that was pretty crazy, but I did it, and now I'm shooting for other ones.
Yeah.
I don't have any specific goals to climb higher than Aconcagua, but I definitely will start adding in a little bit more different terrain, I think, and kind of going. I have my sights set on other challenges.
I love that.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, you've mentioned a couple times now, right? Hearing from other people, like, why would you choose to do this higher mountain? Like, how did you answer? I guess, did you answer that question when other people asked it of you? And then when you reflected on it yourself, is there anything like you wish you could have said, or any reflecting back, anything you wish you could say to those people? Like, what was your reaction when people were like, why are you trying to do this higher mountain?
The people, to be honest with you, a lot of people in my life were really supportive of it and just, I don't know if they got it, but they just at least pretended that they did. And they go, oh yeah, okay, we know you're crazy. So that's totally understandable that you would do that. But there was definitely a few people that said it in a way that asked that question in a way that felt very judgmental, to be honest. I responded at the time with, just what I said here. Just because you get sick one time doesn't mean it's going to happen again. And as we all know, like each experience is completely different. I didn't go into all the details about why I chose the mountain or anything, and I don't think I needed to. But the only thing that I would do different, or that I learned from that, is that I did allow that to get to me a little bit. Like when in the moments when it was being said, I was able to sort of let it roll off me. But when I was flying out to Aconcagua on that, 3-4 flights I had to take to get down there, I had a lot of time to reflect, and there was a little, part of me that was asking the same question, like, "Whoa, this is, are you sure?" Well, I'm already on my way, so yes, I am sure. But and I think I shared that with you, Anjali, on the mountain, actually, that I said this, somebody that I'm very close with asked me that question right before I left. It was like 2 days before I left. They go, how tall was Aconcagua? And I said, and then they were like, why are you doing that? And so, it was also somebody that I respect a lot and has been sort of a mentor for me in climbing. And so it was a little bit of a heavy hit there. But, in retrospect, I'm like, and when I told him this person, I said, just what I told you guys. I'm like, I'm doing it anyways. I can't really tell you why, honestly. I didn't give that person an answer, and I don't think they really needed to hear one from me anyway. So I think I handled that really well. The only thing that I learned, that I took away from that I definitely wouldn't do is, but you're going to second guess yourself even without somebody else second guessing you. You're
Oh,
going
yeah.
to have,
Mhm.
we all know that, right? You're on your
Absolutely.
way, even if you haven't tried something smaller and had an experience like I had in Nepal the year before. Even if you don't have that, you're literally flying there going, what in the world am I thinking? And so that's going to happen no matter what. And I think we're all learning as we get older and like more experienced in life is that that's going to happen, but you shut that off, and that's how you do these big things, you know.
Mm.
And for me, that's what I do. I just tell myself, I don't listen to that voice actually, because all of the things that I've done in my life that have been worth doing, I always had that voice a little bit that said, this is crazy. And I didn't listen to it, and I don't regret that to this day. So
Mm.
even the
Yeah.
times that I wasn't successful, like in the Himalayas. So the Himalayas, you guys, I grew up, with pretty poor, like traveling all the way across the world to the Himalayas what seemed very far-fetched for somebody like me, and I'm not that person anymore. I've, grown up and I'm successful and stuff now, but I literally decided one day while sitting on my couch, I was like, I'm going to go to the Himalayas. And I just looked it up online and I booked it for like 6 months later.
That's
And
incredible.
I
so
love
that
that.
one was just like one of those ones where I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. And it felt very out of this world. I traveled quite a bit in my life, but I have not gone that far and pushed myself in that completely different world. And that high altitude, like there were so many factors about that were so out of my comfort zone. And it was just the most beautiful experience of my life. I do. Yes. And you're going to have that doubting voice, even when you are in every situation. And sometimes you're not going to be successful. And the hard part is to remind that, is to later on think about that and go, oh man, I wonder if I should have listened to that voice. But no matter what, it was still a really great experience, and I learned a lot from it, and I wouldn't change it. I mean, yeah, it'd be great if I had not gotten sick, of course, but you know, that's just what happened. So
Yeah.
I love that. The advice is like, you feel self-doubt. We're all going to feel self-doubt. Get your butt on that plane anywhere. Anyway,
exactly,
can't do
Go do
anything
the
about it.
thing.
Get yourself there.
Yeah.
Go do the dang thing.
exactly.
And the bigger it
Yeah,
scares you, the bigger the reward usually.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is such the truth. And I'm going through that right now in my business, doing
Yeah.
something that is so terrifying and just hard. This year
Mm.
has been nothing but hard, hard, hard moments of me having to be a leader, like a
Mm.
real leader, like leading my partners through challenging times. And so it's, been coming at me from that front as well. And I do remind myself, I'm like, this is going to be worth it. Starting my business in the first place was really scary. I could have easily gone a job at any corporate. I mean, I already was in the corporate world for years before that, and it was not great, but it was reliable. I
Yeah.
had income, and nobody else was relying on me for their income, and that felt really safe. And when you start your own business, as you guys know, it does not feel safe. You have confidence and you are, like being bold every step of the way. But it's definitely not, you definitely have to push yourself out of there. But yeah, it is definitely worth it. And I do remind myself of that even now as I'm going, like I'm coming out of the tail end of this really challenging year and, moving into a new phase. And I keep reminding myself, this is going to be worth it someday. It is. Like everything that you've ever done that has been this hard has been worth it, no matter what. The result is in the end. It's always worth giving it a shot. And I always say, hey, shoot for the stars. I mean, what do you, if you miss, I mean, if you fail trying something huge, who cares? Not, I mean, you're going to learn from it. And yeah, it sucks. It's devastating sometimes even, but it's better than not trying at all. Had I not even tried to go to Nepal, because I was, people were like, why would you want to go to that altitude? I'm like, why would you not want to see some of the old Buddhist temples in the world,
Yeah.
and meet some of the most wonderful people that you've ever met in your life and see the mountains that are, the most magical mountains on this planet. Like, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try. And so, yeah.
Mm. I think that's so beautiful. And yeah, I love that you take like the big risks, right? And like you said, why not shoot for the stars?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That sentence when you said that, it like hit me and I was just like, yeah, like why not?
Yeah.
You'd rather be somebody who tries and who
Yeah.
does and who
Yeah.
sees
Mm-hmm.
and there's always
Yeah, because we're all gonna like end this life at some point, and like even if you had these big experiences, you think back on what you've done, and you had these huge experiences, and like getting life flighted off of, Labuche in the Himalayas and flying through the Khumbu Valley and being so sick I could barely enjoy it, but like just having that powerful experience as you know, as hard as it was and how big of a failure it felt in the moment, like I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life for sure.
100%.
It
Yeah.
was still magic from the beginning to
Yeah.
the end. Being in a hospital in Kathmandu was not magic, but it was a big adventure,
Yeah.
And so I'm like, let's shoot for the stars. Let's keep
Yeah.
trying these big things.
But
I
ultimately, I
love that.
almost feel like that is like a vulnerable way of living life, right?
Yeah.
It's really saying like I am going to try things that scare me, that are big, that are bigger than me, that I don't even know if I can succeed. But that's vulnerability. Like if you want to encompass the word vulnerability, it's exactly what you're doing. It's, taking your business to the next level. It's, you know, going on these mountains, it's having this experience, that like you said, you perceived as a failure, but actually it's like an adventure of a lifetime that you will be able to tell the story forever, and then going to something even bigger than that. Like that is, I really feel like you almost exemplify that idea of living vulnerably by just trying and doing everything that calls to you, no matter how big it is, no matter how crazy it is. I think that all three of us on this call, we're probably everybody's crazy friend that does crazy shit all the time. We're that person. But I
Yeah.
actually think that it's because we have chosen to live a vulnerable life that says, I am going to try. And it's okay if I fail. It's okay if I succeed. And actually, it's not about trying or failing or succeeding. It's about the journey and the adventure and saying yes to life.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I feel like if we I mean, like, I love this imagery of shooting for the stars. And like, we've been talking a lot about successes and failures. And I feel like if we reframe it as like, shoot for the stars, and even if you land on the moon, who's to
Yeah.
say that's not, that's maybe not the star that you were aiming for, but it's still somewhere that you got along the way, right? And I feel like going for it, giving it that try, it's so hard to, I don't know, it's like the successes and failure language, the duality of that gets into my head, but like imagining it as this just kind of like, yeah, shoot for the stars, land on the moon. Hey, that's great. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
we've
exploring the
learned and we've
moon
lived and
for
we've,
fuck's
yeah,
sake. Like you're
yeah,
on the
Better
moon.
than what a
right.
lot of people are willing to do.
Yeah.
And for me, what makes me feel the most vulnerable is failing publicly.
Mm.
Okay, so when I went to the Himalayas and started out on this adventure, it wasn't just about like social media. I just talked to all of my friends and family before I went. They were so interested in what I was going to be doing, and they, what wanted me, and everybody was, following the trip on, from afar, and like really rooting for me, really wanted me to have this amazing adventure, saw how much work I put into it and all of that. And so it's really a cool experience because when of course when I'm like, I literally had to post and send it out to everybody that was following my story, like I'm getting life flighted off, and that was after the day before I sent a message to everybody saying I feel great, we made it to 18,000 feet, everything's going really well. And then it was 24 hours later where I had to say that, and then it was like, oh, and now I'm in the hospital, I think I'm fine, don't worry everybody, I'm doing fine, but really I'm like, oh my gosh, this is kind of serious. um, but yeah, publicly failing and being able to just be okay. It's for me, it's because the kind of ego side of me worries that, was worried, like, what if I wasn't prepared enough? Or, what if people think I, bit off too much, or, like these judgments and that sort of thing. So for me, when I think about vulnerability, it's one thing for me to be like just going and trying all these things and putting myself out there, but you really have to be okay with taking whatever, I don't even want to say judgment, but whatever people's opinions or whatever. And most of the time, they're a lot more forgiving than we are on ourselves, to be honest.
Yeah.
Especially if you're somebody that, has always have been really ambitious. But yeah, so that was a really tough part of that too, was being to say, coming back and just saying, hey, like, this thing happened to me, and being able to work through that, I think. And then knowing that when I went to Aconcagua, that was a possibility again. And then if I had not, maybe if I had gotten sick again, then that would have been really, really tough on my ego. And that would have been another one. But people asked me, they said, if you got sick on Aconcagua, what? And I said, maybe if that had happened again, then I would have chosen to not go that high. I don't know, but I definitely wouldn't have let it deter me from trying big things.
Yeah.
And so that I do know for a fact.
We're also in a world
Beautiful.
where we're so saturated with everyone's successes all the time.
Exactly.
It becomes very hard then to show anything other than this pure level of just like success and everything is fine and happy and we're doing
The
all these things.
shiny.
We're setting and achieving goals like it's not
Mhm.
nobody's business. But like this is not the reality of
Yeah.
climbing. It's not the reality of running a business. Like there are ups and downs, and I think also what people crave is a little bit more of the human side of people, which is like shit gets hard, and this is how we deal with it when it gets hard, and this is how we move through it into what ultimately looks like our version of success and ultimately looks like us stepping into the goals that we had. But it's not always beautiful and rosy and dandy. But it's really hard to like take people on that journey with you. I think especially not people who aren't climbing or people who aren't starting their own business, right? Because it's really hard to try and put people in your shoes. So I think it's amazing that you did that and you continue to do that, whether it's with friends and family, which honestly can be the hardest, right? It's like you can put something up on Instagram and it feels great and you're like, I had a shitty day, but like telling the people closest to you about those things can feel even harder. So
My
yeah, just
gosh,
like
no
real props to
kidding.
you.
You're so right about that. Because people that don't know you, I mean, you don't care as much about their
No.
opinion. It's the
Mm-mm.
people that you really respect. I mean, I have people like siblings that I've just looked up to my whole life. So when they say something, I'm getting over it now that I'm getting older. But back,
Yeah.
there were times where if they said something to me, I mean, it really definitely made an impact.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, for sure. That is,
Absolutely.
yeah, showing your vulnerability to the world is tough.
Yeah, but that's what we crave. It's what's real, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what's really real. Like life is up and down. Life
Mm-hmm.
is sometimes things work, sometimes they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that, social media has given this illusion that everything is perfect and everything works. And so, you know, and there's so much good with social media. I'm not bashing it, but it does give off that illusion. So, I think that having that vulnerability to say, hey, I tried something really big and it didn't work out. And guess what? I'm going to try something even fucking bigger next time. And
Exactly.
guess what?
I have
It
no
worked
idea.
out. Like,
Yeah.
and like I'm just going to keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that that's something really special. And we were kind of chatting a little bit about this before, we even hit record on the podcast about this group of women that we all met on Aconcagua that we just really get each other. And, we have the same lifestyle, we have the same mentalities. And it brings me back to this quote. And somebody please tell me who it is because I don't want to slaughter who it is. But it's like, unless you're in the arena with me, like you don't get a voice in my life. It's like, And the
Yeah.
courage is,
I like that.
that one that I'm talking about, like with the
I've
Is
heard
arena.
that
it
Brene?
before, but I can't.
Brene Brown like quotes it, and
I think
I
it's
don't know if it's
oh,
her quote or if she's quoted it for somebody else. Like,
Right.
unless you are in the arena with me, like
ah, Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt. I was like, I
Ah,
know she talked about that, but I didn't think it was her quote. But yeah, it's like unless you are there with me, unless you are making these big life decisions, unless you are vulnerable to put yourself out there, to be seen in successes and failures, or things working out, things not working out. Like actually, if you're in the stands, like that doesn't matter.
yeah,
And
that's so
maybe if
true.
you're in the arena, I'll actually listen because you're there
Mhm,
with me and you have a
mhm,
different perspective and mindset, and like I can take it into consideration.
mhm.
But yeah, I do. I think it's very vulnerable to live the type of life, the entrepreneur life. Mountains are humbling, and they are you can't have an ego on them, and they are the epitome of vulnerability. So I think it is. I think it's very vulnerable to share like all aspects of who we are, because then we're also being seen as a full human, right? And
Absolutely.
that's intimacy, and that's what we all crave, but it's actually what we all fear too.
Yeah,
Mm.
it is funny that you should say that because I was just thinking about this one particular person that I follow on social media that I actually really don't know, but they share posts of them, and they don't overshare, but they share vulnerable posts. It's a male, and I'm very drawn to them. I actually find myself clicking on them and reading them, and they're lengthy sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm interested because I like when people show their true self.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I've really been trying to do more. Like I'm on a journey myself personally to discover who my true self is without so many influences, and just be okay with being that, and being raw and real.
Yeah.
But what you said about we're drawn to that, but we're also afraid of it is really really good point, Stephanie.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's, just in life and mountaineering and entrepreneurship and all of it. That's
Yeah.
the most vulnerable journey that we'll ever take is
Mhm.
coming into that true self and just owning it
Yeah.
and living from our heart,
Mm.
living our most
Yes.
authentic life and taking big risks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm going to throw the Teddy Roosevelt quote out there because it's just so good. The
Yeah.
credit belongs to the man or woman who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood.
Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I love
Well,
that.
sisters, we are all in this arena together,
Yeah, we
and
are.
it's an
Mhm.
honor to walk beside all of you. And yeah, thank you so much, Wendy, for getting on and sharing the ups and downs and the realities. And I just think it's so inspiring to hear like, look, you can have setbacks, and then you can even go bigger
Mhm.
and succeed. Like
Yeah.
that is a universal human story, right? We
Yeah.
all have setbacks,
Yeah.
and sometimes people go backwards after that, and they never want to try again. But you said, I'm not just going to try again, I'm going to go bigger, and you succeeded. And that is such a testament to vulnerability and to courage and to who you are as a woman. And I think it's very inspiring. And I hope that people out there listening, if they've had some sort of setback in their life, they can hear your story and be like, nope, I'm going to do it again, because and I'm going to dream even bigger. I'm going to dream a bigger dream, and not give up because of a setback. So thank you for sharing your story today.
Yeah. Thank you, ladies. I love you both. Appreciate all the
Love
feedback
you.
and for having me on your show.
Oh,
Yeah.
love you so much. Really, really appreciate having you on. And with that, thank you all to everyone who tuned in, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.